for y'all. We ain't gonna do it like that. I mean, I know how that money comes. You know what I'm saying? My song is the state song. Georgia's the state song.
We had a song with Ludacris. So one day I'm at the crib, right? And I'm watching MTV. How you gonna debut my shit that ain't even there? After you steal my shit, and I write certain songs for you, and then you get a Grammy for a song.
I don't believe in, I can't believe people believe people. Like, man, I hear on every record that Chris do, I hear him rap about how many records he sold, how much money he got. Well, why are you stealing from me?
Ludacris might have become a household name, platinum plaques, Fast and Furious fame, and the face of disturbing thought peace. But behind all that spotlight, some of his own artists were left in the dark, feeling cheated, muted, and straight up played. One of the loudest stories? Field Mob, the southern duo with wild chemistry and raw storytelling straight out of Georgia.
Taught me though that, hey man, they'll smile in your face just to jump on your hot song, and then they'll throw you in the tax write-off section, you know what I'm saying? And that's cold-blooded. So shout out to the people at DTP that I love and got love for, and even shout out to them for what they did, because at the end of...
These guys weren't some mixtape nobodies. They had major talent, but instead of blowing up, their ride under Ludacris's label ended in silence, frustration, and accusations of being blackballed. Fans say they were creatively erased, and worse, someone else took credit for the track that should have been their big moment.
Field Mob's never had a solid record deal. Yeah. Everything we did, we probably one of the only groups that never had payover.
It all came crashing down around one song. Georgia, on paper, it looked like a Southern dream team. Ludacris, Field Mob, and Jamie Foxx, all under one label.
I have fun with DTP. I'm pretty sure a lot of people be hearing about me and Ludacris going whatever back and forth. He's a sneak disser.
But behind the scenes, Field Mob felt they got done dirty. In multiple interviews, they straight up said Georgia was their track from day one. They claimed they brought the concept, wrote the verses, built the whole sound, and Ludacris only pulled up later to drop a verse. But when the song dropped, it wasn't Field Mob FD Luda Nope. It was released as Ludacris featuring Field Mob and Jamie Foxx.
TV debut in Georgia. I debuting my song and I'm at home. That's weird. I wanted to meet Carson Daly too. Let me get some of that white money. You feel me?
Suddenly, it looked like a Ludacris record, not theirs. And get this, Field Mob said nobody even told them when the video was dropping. Total blindsided. Field Mob was blindsided, literally. One day they turned on the TV and boom, there it was, the Georgia music video playing on BET, and they had no idea it was even dropping. No call, no message, nothing. And when they watched it, they were barely in it. It felt like they were being cut out of their own moment, slowly erased from the picture they helped paint. But the moment that really crossed the line, the Grammys. Georgia got nominated and Ludacris hit the stage to perform it, solo. No Field Mob, no shout out, not even a thank you, just silence. To Field Mob, that was the final confirmation. Ludacris was claiming full credit for their song, while they stood in the shadows like they were never part of it.
For the best rap album goes to Ludacris is your year, baby.
You know I got it.
One more time. Hold on, wait. Special shout out to Oprah and special shout out to Bill O'Reilly. I love you. This goes out to my father. This goes out to my father.
They weren't asking for the red carpet, just respect. If they built the song from scratch, they wanted to stand on that stage too. But instead, the business moves and all the spotlight got handled without them. And the worst part, nobody explained anything. No call, no warning, no reason, just cold silence. Legally, it's all a blur. There's no paperwork made public about who actually owns the master for Georgia, and no lawsuits ever came out. But emotionally, the damage was loud and clear. That track could have been Field Mob's big break, and instead, it became the symbol of being pushed aside. And guess what? They couldn't even leave. Field Mob was locked into a multi-album deal with Disturbing the Peace, and that deal was tied to Def Jam South. Walking away would have meant major legal chaos. So they stayed, trapped in the system, watching their moment get snatched in real time.
Field Mobs never had a solid record deal.
Yeah.
Everything we did, we probably one of the only groups that never had.
So Field Mob held on, hoping things would turn around. But Georgia wasn't the breakthrough. It was the beginning of the end. That moment marked what they now call a long, draining pattern of being left out, underpaid, and straight up undercut. As time passed, the frustration didn't fade. It grew, because it wasn't just about being pushed out the spotlight. They say the checks weren't even adding up. After being iced out of Georgia, Field Mob said things took a darker turn. They started feeling like they were being blackballed, for real. They opened up in multiple interviews, saying that once their issues with Ludacris hit the surface, their momentum flatlined. Bookings that used to roll in, gone. Collabs they were talking about behind the scenes vanished. According to them, it wasn't bad luck, it was too consistent. Sean J even said they started hearing whispers, calls being made, quiet warnings passed around. In his words, it felt like someone was secretly making sure they didn't get in certain rooms. Now let's be fair, there's no hard proof that Ludacris personally pulled strings to blackball them. No leaked emails, no recordings, nothing public tying him to that. But Field Mob still believes someone with real pull was working behind the scenes, and they link it directly to their fallout with disturbing Tha Peace. This wasn't just disappointment anymore, this was damage. In the music game, your name, your connections, your access, that's the currency. And once that starts drying up, you're done. Field Mob felt like they weren't just being silenced, they were being erased. In the industry, once the right people stop answering your calls, it's game over, fast, and that's exactly what Field Mob says happened. Meetings got canceled, emails got ignored, big events.
Pulled me to the side, Mike, who's my manager, pulled me to the side and explained that the PR person had been contacted by BET personnel and had been instructed.
Suddenly, they weren't on the list. They weren't just losing clout, they were being cut off without a single word. They talked about specific moments too, like being blocked from red carpets, getting left off award show invites, and being ghosted by major platforms that used to support them heavy.
To get slapped in the face like that by, Shaka and Ludacris was just kind of crazy, man. I just really didn't even understand it. I needed to get some answers.
No official reason, no explanations, just cold silence. But the timing, too perfect to ignore. And here's the kicker. They weren't the only ones feeling the heat. Other artists connected to Disturbing Tha Peace started hinting at the same pattern. Take Shauna, for example. She was signed under Ludacris too. After she left the label, she claimed she was blocked from performing at the BET Hip Hop Awards. And even though she never called Luda out by name, she did say it came from someone from my former label. That right there had fans and insiders raising eyebrows. What makes her story hit harder? She never dissed Ludacris, never aired dirty laundry, no public drama at all. So if she still got blackballed, that's not personal beef, that's business retaliation. And then there's Chingy, loosely tied to DTP through Def Jam South. He told Vlad TV in 2013, "I didn't like how things were handled. You don't treat artists like that when they help you win." He cleared up that he didn't have beef with Ludacris personally, but said the label politics and shady management left him feeling played and pushed out. This wasn't just one artist crying foul, this was a pattern, and the more you look into it, the louder the silence gets. Even I-20, one of the more loyal soldiers in the DTP camp, kept it real in old interviews. He didn't throw shots, but he did admit the behind-the-scenes politics weren't always smooth.
This is who starts saying Disturbing the Peace was stealing from me, not me. I never said that. The lawyer made that statement.
He hinted that once the machine stopped pushing you, you were stuck. No matter how talented you were or how deep your loyalty ran, it got real hard to keep your momentum going. So when Field Mob said they were iced out, it didn't sound far-fetched. It sounded like part of a deeper pattern. Artists who helped build the label started finding themselves locked out once business got messy or personal ties broke down. But Field Mob, they didn't bow out quietly. They took it public. In interviews, freestyles, and studio cuts. No full-blown diss tracks, but the energy in those records spoke loud. You could hear the betrayal in their bars. They weren't just dropped, They were erased from a piece of Southern rap they helped shape. For Field Mob, this wasn't just industry drama. It was personal. And as more doors slammed shut, they turned back to the mic and started dropping heat. Not for clout, but for truth. These weren't sneak disses. They were response records. Tracks that gave voice to everything they'd been holding in for years. And yeah, one of those songs aimed directly at Ludacris. Because according to Field Mob, Georgia wasn't just about being left out, it was about being ripped off. They've said in interviews that they never saw the kind of money that song should have brought in. They claimed the pay didn't match the impact. No lawsuits were filed, no paperwork was ever made public, which makes it hard to know what went down. But for Field Mob, the numbers never added up. And that silence from behind the scenes, that said everything. Field Mob's message never wavered. We helped build this, but we didn't benefit from it. And to them, this wasn't just about Georgia. They've hinted that money mismanagement and lack of transparency was a bigger issue the whole time they were signed to Disturbing Thought Peace. According to them, the label made the calls, not the artists. They say they were left in the dark when it came to royalties, rights, and who was really cashing the checks. But the real sting? Georgia was supposed to be their breakout. It had the radio spins, the Grammy buzz, Jamie Foxx on the hook, everything. But instead of leveling up, they say they lost visibility and the bag that was supposed to come with it. They didn't feel like artists with a seat at the table. They felt like they were being managed, not partnered. Coming up in Albany, Georgia, they were used to calling their own shots. But once under DTP, they claim everything got centralized, no input, barely any communication, and all the major decisions made without them. And once again, no lawsuits, no exposed contracts, no courtroom drama. But their story stayed solid. When Georgia blew up, they didn't see the shine, the credit, or the cash they were owed. And it didn't stop at money. In later years, Field Mob started pulling the curtain back even more, not just talking cash, but creativity. They claimed they weren't just writing their own hits. They were ghostwriting for Ludacris too. As things kept unraveling between them and Luda, Field Mob began dropping hints about what really went down behind the scenes, especially when it came to who was really putting the pen to paper. In interviews, Sean J didn't bite his tongue. He flat out said Field Mob didn't just make their own music, they ghost wrote for Ludacris too. Now in the industry, ghostwriting ain't shocking, especially when artists are juggling movies, tours, and running a label. But for Field Mob, it cut deep. To them, it felt like they were being used in the background while being completely erased in public. No shout-outs, no credits, no love, just bars being borrowed and their names left in the dust. Now, let's get this straight. Ludacris has never confirmed or denied those claims. No paperwork, no liner notes, no official credits tying Field Mob to his songs. But the duo's story hasn't changed. They say they dropped hooks, verses, entire flows, and when the track finally came out, their fingerprints were all over it. But their names, nowhere in sight. Sean J even called Ludacris out directly in an interview. If you got something to say it to my face. That's not just label tension, that's personal. Field Mob felt like their creativity was straight up stolen, and instead of a real convo, all they got was cold silence. No phone call, no message, no public respect, just distance and denial. And while none of this has been proven in court or on record, the fact that Field Mob keeps telling the same story and that other DTP artists have echoed similar experiences makes it hard to ignore. Field Mob truly believed their pen helped fuel DTP's rise, but the praise, the credit, the checks weren't coming back their way. And that kind of one-sided love builds real resentment, especially when you feel like you're putting in the work and getting played at the same time. Ghostwriting in hip-hop has always been tricky. Some artists own it, others pretend it never happened. But when the writers start speaking up, it can change everything fans thought they knew. Field Mob said they kept quiet for years, out of respect, but respect only goes so far when you're being shut out, underpaid, and erased from your biggest moment. Eventually, the silence cracked, because to them, this wasn't just about a missing royalty check or a music video snub. It was about being pushed out of a label they helped put on the map. The longer they stayed quiet, the more the public saw Ludacris as the only name behind the movement. And that didn't sit right. So they started speaking up, loud, not just in interviews, not just with subtle shade. They did what they do best. They hit the studio. Once the ghostwriting claims hit the surface, things flipped from silence to straight-up subliminals, then full-blown shots. Field Mob started dropping tracks that weren't labeled as disses, but you knew what was up. The tone, the bars, the pain in their delivery. It was all aimed straight at DTP, and one name came up over and over: Ludacris. These weren't clout-chasing records. This wasn't for viral buzz. This was personal. They rapped about being sidelined, watching their songs get repackaged, and getting cut out of every major business decision while their names faded in the background. They didn't have to drop names in every bar. The message was loud and clear for anyone who had been watching this unfold. This was about telling their truth, about fighting back against the idea that they were just bitter ex-label artists. Field Mob felt misrepresented, boxed out, and quietly blackballed. And for them, the mic was the only way to take the power back. The booth became their courtroom, and the verses, that was their testimony. What really cranked up the tension? Ludacris responded, but not with a sit-down interview or a public statement. Nah, he clapped back the hip-hop way, threw a subliminal verse on a future track. Field Mob took that personally. Whether it was meant as a shot or not, they heard it loud and clear, and to them, it was shade wrapped in a beat. After everything they'd been through, the silence, the shutouts, the missing money, now they felt like they were being mocked publicly. That was a final slap in the face. So they hit back with bars of their own, lyrics calling out the hypocrisy. Field Mob said they kept quiet out of loyalty, held back out of respect, and in return, they got ghosted, shaded, and slowly erased from the very legacy they helped build. By this point, any kind of reunion or reconciliation off the table. But even with the tension bubbling, it never turned into a public war. No lawsuits, no interviews throwing dirt, just straight lyrical smoke. But in hip-hop, that's all it takes to shift how people remember history. For most casual fans, this all happened in the shadows. No explosive headlines, no wild radio rants. But for Field Mob, this wasn't some small misunderstanding. This was the slow, painful breakdown of trust in a label that never gave them the partnership they thought they had. Even with their truth out there in the music, the damage was done. They weren't out for revenge. They were fighting for recognition. But instead of getting their flowers, they say they got ignored, then turned into a punchline. So what happened after the dust settled? Did Field Mob ever get the industry respect they deserved? Years after the fallout with Ludacris and Disturbing Thought Peace, their presence in the mainstream started to fade. Field Mob never officially broke up, but the energy shifted heavy. The fire slowed down. They didn't disappear completely, but the movement wasn't what it used to be. Sean J became the louder half, popping up in interviews and YouTube podcasts like The Raw Report, keeping their story alive. He's never shied away from revisiting the Georgia mess, the behind-the-scenes ghostwriting, and the shady label politics they say pushed them quietly out the game. Smoke, the other half of the duo, stayed way more low-key. He still raps here and there and even teased a solo project at one point, but he's kept things on the down low compared to Sean. Every now and then, fans catch wind of a possible Field Mob reunion. Some snippets, a few underground joints, hints dropped in interviews. But nothing official has ever hit the charts or gone viral. Still, in the eyes of many, Field Mob holds their spot in Southern rap history. Original, raw, storytellers with real chemistry. But after that DTP fallout, the momentum they once had, it just never fully bounced back. Meanwhile, Ludacris took a whole different route. Acting became his new lane, dominating the Fast and Furious franchise and popping up in other film projects. His brand kept growing, and while he's still respected in the culture, he rarely, if ever, speaks on the artist he came up with. And when it comes to Field Mob, total silence. No public response to the ghostwriting talk, no apology, no interview addressing the claims, no sign of reconciliation, nothing. The story has only ever been told from one side, Field Mob's. Through lyrics, interviews, and raw reflections, they've carried the weight of the fallout for years. But even with all the tension, Field Mob never went nuclear. No wild smear campaign, no lawsuit, just music and truth as they saw it. No lawsuits, no smear campaigns, just memories, music, and that lingering feeling of what could have been. Field Mob never fully shut the door on coming back, but they've made one thing crystal clear. If they return, it's going to be on their terms. No middlemen, no label politics, no watered down vision. Whether or not the industry ever gives them their flowers, one thing's for sure. Field Mob's impact can't be erased. Their gritty Southern style, slick pen game, and raw storytelling helped shape an era of hip-hop. They might not have reached the top spot they were gunning for under DTP, but their voice in the game still hits hard. Sometimes the music says what the contracts won't, and in Field Mob's case, it did. Their fallout with Ludacris and Disturbing Thought Peace didn't blow up into headlines. No viral disses, no messy Instagram feuds, just a quiet split that left fans wondering what really went down behind the scenes. Because on the surface, it looked smooth, but underneath, there was tension, silence, and a slow breakdown that nobody ever truly addressed. Field Mob walked into DTP with raw talent, street credibility, and a strong Southern identity. They weren't industry clones, they were country, proud, lyrical, and real. They added something different to the label's lineup, but somewhere along the way, their momentum slipped. Was it a lack of communication? Was it label power plays, or something more personal between them and Luda? We may never get the full truth, but one thing's clear. Georgia, the very track that should have put Field Mob on a new level, ended up symbolizing everything they lost. It was supposed to be their breakthrough, but Georgia ended up being the moment everything shifted. The track that most fans still link to Field Mob became, in their eyes, the same moment they lost the most. The spotlight hit, but not on them. The blackballing claims, still unproven, no receipts, no paper trail, but the pattern, it lines up way too well with what other artists from that same camp have described. And while Ludacris has never addressed it publicly, that silence, it left a space, and Field Mob filled it with their truth. But let's be real, this story ain't about picking a hero or a villain. It's about the game, the music industry, and how behind the charts and big names, there's a system that doesn't always give credit where it's due. This is about control, power, creative ownership, and what happens when two artists pour their soul into the booth, only to watch the stage be handed to someone else. Field Mob might never return the way they once dreamed, no huge comeback tour, no flashy rollout. But they've already left their mark, through their interviews, through their lyrics, through the raw honesty they've laid down over the years. They weren't just some footnote in Southern rap. They were part of the movement, that early 2000s Southern wave that changed the sound forever. Award shows might have overlooked them, but the culture never truly forgot. Because in the end, Field Mob's story still echoes, not just in the music, but in every conversation about respect, credit, and ownership. No messy drama, no clout-chasing headlines, just two voices refusing to be silenced. If you felt this one, make sure to smash that like, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and hit subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories of the culture. This is Dripzine, where real stories get their shine.